Turkey is well known for its tea, lots of mosques, shopping at the Turkish Grand Bazaar, hair transplant surgery, kebabs and sweets, and of course, Cappadocia, the best place to have a hot air balloon experience. At the intersection of Eurasia, the cross-continental collision of Turkish culture, the combination of Eastern-Western influences, tastes, religions and stories make this country so exciting. This is a romantic country with otherworldly landscapes and ancient miracles. It was once the playground of Cleopatra and Mark Antony, Caesar and Alexander the Great. In summer, the galleon anchored on the blue voyage from the Aegean Sea to the eastern Mediterranean Sea crosses Turkey's exceptionally beautiful turquoise coast, sailing in crystal-clear bays, in fishing villages, blue dining tables and more. On the other hand, Turkish economy has surprised the world. For economists, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has become a joke. He stubbornly ignores the economic views and experience of the Turkish economy, and sent Turkey's Lira currency to new all-time lows as he called for interest rate cuts. In an interview he said, adding that lowering interest rates would lift the burden on investments. If we remove the burden of interest rates from investments and costs, then we will enter a calmer environment because it's the interest rates that cause cost inflation in the first place. The Turkish leader's comments are part of a longer explanation of his unorthodox view that lower borrowing costs will slow inflation, which is contrary to the views of most central banks around the world. Erdogan believed that cutting interest rates can lower producers' costs and eventually result in slower increases in consumer prices. However, many of the economists analyze Erdogan's views on interest rates as a joke. They are a critical part of an economic policy which worked well for the Turkish leader over a few years. Turkish president and the Anatolian Tigers. The fact is, Erdogan fires central bank governors so quickly without any scientific concept or analysis, as he had gone through 3 governors in less than 2 years as well as some deputy governors too. If Erdogan's governor doesn't cooperate, then the governor is kicked out without any doubt. In particular, this president got support of the so-called Anatolian Tigers, the religious conservative entrepreneurs from central and southern Turkey, who have grown equally rich and indebted under Erdogan's presidential period. Turkish economic process was being driven for over a decade by low-cost loans to people just like the Tigers, a lot of it going into the construction sector, with much of the capital coming back from abroad. While the international economy was ravaged by the coronavirus, Turkey's gross domestic product really grew by 1.8%, not as a result of the government spent heavily but because the banks created loans left and right. This sort of boom isn't sustainable. A chronically overheated economic system stokes inflation, and the heavy reliance on overseas forex inflows has weakened the lira, stoking inflation even further. Erdogan's son-in-law attempted to fix the situation by selling off foreign currency to maintain the lira from weakening, which brought about his firing from minister's position, and as the result, reserves fell into the lowest level. Erdogan's failed economic perception. Indeed, it is possible that the Turkish public will finally recognize the existential failure of Erdogan's failed economic perception, such as, the economy is growing, but it is only measured in terms of a devalued lira. Expressed in dollars, GDP per capita has fallen 40% since 2013 to $7,700. Istanbul Investment Bank's chief economist called Erdogan's fake data of Turkey's GDP growth was an exchange rate illusion. Erdogan is not the only who likes cheap money to support the economy, but most of such politicians do this only as it is politically expedient. However, for Erdogan, cheap money seems to be a profound principle, possibly related to Muslims' prohibition on interest-bearing loans. In fact, he has repeatedly used quasi-religious terms to condemn interest rates, calling them the mother of all evils, and referring to the devil's triangle of interest rates, inflation, and exchange rates. Turkey does not have much room for economic maneuver. In financial context, most of the nations in the world have overcome the most serious stage of the COVID pandemic, and have the opportunity to accelerate the recovery of the global economy. Measures to break the spiral of inflation and devaluation would be a painful but essential tool to correct Turkey's structural imbalances and help it achieve sustainable long-term growth. International trade and investments of Turkey. Now let's get into the influence of Turkey's presence in international trade, which has shown strength since past years. As of 2016, Turkey's main trading partners are Germany, Russia, United Kingdom, United Arab Emirates, Iraq, Italy, and China, many of which are leading the way in import and export. Turkey has established a customs union with the EU as Turkey wanted to be the part of European Committee. It was signed in 1995 to increase export industrial production while benefiting from foreign investment in the country from Europe. In addition to the customs union, Turkey has also signed free trade agreements with 22 countries. A very important aspect of Turkish trade is the automobile industry. Its main export product are cars, valued at $13.2 billion worth national revenue. The country's other exports with the highest value are gold and jewelries. In contrast, it imports many of the same industrial goods, such as $17.1 billion in gold and $9 in refined oil. Turkey is also a source of foreign direct investment in Central and Eastern Europe and the Commonwealth of Independent States. It has invested more than $1.5 billion, of which 32% is in Russia, mainly in the raw materials and construction sectors, and 46% is in Black Sea neighbors such as Bulgaria and Romania. Turkish companies also have a large amount of foreign direct investment in Poland, which is about $100 million. Effects of COVID-19 shock on the Turkish economy. The impact of COVID-19 has had direct influence on the Turkish economy through conventional supply and demand channels. The decline in supply includes the decision to lock down at the beginning of the pandemic, and workers who have contracted the virus and cannot return to work. The impact is mainly due to the fear factor, which reflects the new consumption habits of families with limited social interactions. In addition, industries that are more closely connected to the rest of the world through business ties or external borrowing are hit hardest by supply shortages. The overall impact in economy determined the economic cost of COVID-19 with approximately 17% of GDP. When the COVID crisis broke out, Turkey introduced an aggressive monetary easing policy and moderate fiscal regulation. At the beginning of 2020, the key interest rate set by the Central Bank of the Republic of Turkey, CBRT, was 11.25%, while the overall inflation rate was 12.15%. Due to the flexibility after the COVID-19 outbreak, the discount rate soon fell well below the inflation rate. As the real political share slipped further into the negative territory, dollarization began. The dollarization of the exchange rate was offset by the sale of central bank reserves. Even before the COVID-19 pandemic, continued high inflation and growing deficits have been plagued the Turkish economy. For more than a decade, inflation expectations have exceeded the 5% target by more than half, and the Turkish lira had depreciated against the US dollar since the end of 2017. The adjustment of radical policies during the coronavirus pandemic, unsustainable policy mix based on excessive credit growth, and the sale of central bank foreign exchange reserves to offset the impact of capital outflows further increased vulnerabilities. This resulted in an additional 40% loss in the value of lira while COVID-19 was at peak by causing trouble all over the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe our channel World Facts to support us, and like this video as well. See you in another video. Cheers!